Donald Trump is choosing his cabinet now, and he is appointing people who are warmongers, neocons, many of them who are very much pro-genocide, pro-Israel, massive supporters of Israel, and how that's translating on the ground. Now, Donald Trump usually during his campaign used to promote himself as the anti-war man. Criticism of the Iraq war, criticism of the presence of the United States forces abroad, saying that America first, of course. And now he's doing the exact opposite of what he was saying during his campaign. And we spoke about it at the time when it comes to Donald Trump and the fact that the man has been supported by Zionists who have Israel first in their mind, not America first. And now he's proving to be their little puppet, and by his appointments, a warmonger as well, not a person who is looking to de-escalate. He had his history during his first term as the United States president when he made several decisions when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian issue that were extremely controversial and in many cases illegal, such as the recognition of sovereignty of Israel on the occupied Golan Heights, the moving of the United States Embassy to Jerusalem, an occupied area, and alongside many favors he gave for Israel. And now by the people he's appointing, well, by their resume, they're worse than the Democrats. They're worse than the going government now, than the Biden administration. And Donald Trump already had several statements in relation to Iran. He had this aggressive approach when it comes to Iran. And all of these appointments that he's making now for his new administration that's due to take place and control by the end of January 2025, these things are indicating that the man could potentially be even more dangerous and more bloody than Joe Biden and his administration. Now, there are many things leading to the end of January and the arrival of Donald Trump. We have Iran and the pending response, and we have an anticipated declaration coming between Russia and Iran. It would include defense. It would be a strategic agreement. No one knows if it will be a defense pact indeed that would open the door for both countries to participate in any case where either country has an aggression on it or a war, or needs the other country to support it during any military campaign. These things would be very significant when it comes to the political situation and the military situation in the West Asian region, and it would change the equation when it comes to other countries too, and the position and influence of the United States administration in the region. Now, we also had a statement coming from the Iranian president not long ago that we spoke about at the time, when he said that an encounter with the United States is inevitable, both regionally and globally. When he says an encounter with the US is very likely to happen on a regional basis, that's very much understood because of the US presence in the region of West Asia and the Gulf states. But when he spoke about international arenas, this is where things could be indicating that they might have something coming with Russia and other countries too that would potentially involve Iranian involvement that would secure its own interests and the countries that they have relations with. And we are seeing more and more statements coming from Iran. That's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Shortly after the Israeli attack on Iran, they started to have statements. It was an initial phase of absorbing the attack, understanding exactly what happened. And then we started to hear certain statements. Now, the statement started by Iran saying we have the right to respond, and we will choose the time and the level of response. We had a statement coming from the supreme leader of Iran saying that the political echelon in the country will be deciding and doing what's in the best of the interest of the people. However, after that, we started to have more and more aggressive statements coming from Iran saying that the attack is coming and it's going to be more painful than the other attacks. And now we have another statement coming from the commander of the IRGC, Hossein Salami, in what was labeled as the Nasrallah drills in Iran, in which he stated this: brace yourselves for revenge. The IRGC chief has warned the enemies. You will receive painful blows. Wait for our retaliation, Major General Hossein Salami said, speaking at a major security and combat maneuver dubbed Nasrallah on Thursday. The fact that they're naming this operation or drill Nasrallah highlights how important Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was for Iran, and the fact that they haven't finished when it comes to their retaliation against the genocide entity following his assassination, following their expansion of their war crimes and genocide, not only in Gaza or in Palestine, but also in Lebanon as well. We will fight you to the end and will not allow you to dominate the destiny of Muslims, he stated. Major General Salami said all falsehood powers have come to help the Israeli regime to force Muslims into concession, dominate their destiny, occupy their lands, and pillage their religious identity. But a study of history shows that Muslims will never surrender, he underlined. He pointed out that the resistance fighters in the region are taking revenge for the enemy's blows on the resistance commanders and youths, adding that they are standing firm and united and inflicting irreparable blows on the enemy every day. Today we are witnessing a confrontation between light and darkness. Wherever light appears, darkness is doomed to destruction. The essence of our enemy is darkness and falsehood is doomed to destruction. Again, aggressive statements, and by every single statement that we're hearing from Iran, with every new statement coming, indicating that the response is coming, we're hearing a higher tone when it comes to that response. And judging by the pattern of behavior and the pattern of responses coming from Iran that are usually very calculated and actually in line with international law, unlike the attacks coming from Western establishment and their little neo-colonialist puppet genocidal entity called Israel, they are very calculated. But despite that calculation, they always intensified. So the attack that came in April initially, it was a historical attack. We did not see Iran conducting such a major attack when it comes to Israel ever. Then we had the following attack that was devastating and more harsh, no notice whatsoever. The United States in the last second noticed certain suspicious movements based on their surveillance from Iran and warned the genocide entity, but it wasn't enough for Israel to prepare, leading to over 90% of the missiles of Iran landing on the genocide entity's bases that are used to conduct war crimes and a genocide and an infanticide against the Palestinian people and cause destruction against civilian infrastructure and civilian buildings and hospitals, and the list goes on. So they are increasing the tone. And many people would, of course, say, okay, well, you have been threatening. Well, they have threatened before, and they implemented their threats. They actually went ahead and followed up. And again, when it comes to the current situation, despite all of the talks that we're hearing about potential ceasefires, none of which confirmed by Israel, by the way. As a matter of fact, the Palestinian side is saying it's all theater. We are seeing no development. Recently, one of the senior figures of Hamas, who's leading the potential political solution or negotiations, as in when they participate or receive certain feedback, he said, prepare yourself for a very long war of attrition, indicating that there is no solution in the horizon despite all of the talks coming. And the recent attempts and statements coming from the United States, especially when it comes to Lebanon, are proving to be the same old theater that we have seen before. They talk about a potential ceasefire, but nothing happens at the end. Now, on the ground, there are things to support the notion that Israel indeed needs a ceasefire. Israel is underplaying the level of damage it's suffering militarily, economically, on a societal basis, in every single sector inside of Israel. That led Benjamin Netanyahu to post an image on X with a broken heart and the logo of the Golani Brigade. When did he publish that, Benjamin Netanyahu? Benjamin Netanyahu published that after the massive blows that Hizballah gave to the genocide entity near the Lebanese borders and inside of Israeli territories. And this is his X post. A broken heart and the Golani logo. Why the Golani logo? Because Golani is the direct successor of the Haganah. Well, one of the main organizations that used to conduct terror activities in occupied Palestine. It's the most ancient brigade. It's the oldest brigade of Israel, and they have the most experience when it comes to Lebanon, and they have a priority when it comes to any operations in Lebanon. And they are operating, of course, through Division 36 of Israel in Lebanon. Hizballah took down a whole building with child murderers inside it, with Israeli soldiers inside it, butchering all of them inside of that building. Like I said the other day, they go back to Israel in body bags from Lebanon. And they know that, by the way. Many of them know that. Then, apart from the attacks that we had yesterday, and yesterday, Hezbollah attacked for the first time the Kiryat, the hub, where everything is being conducted from. It has a northern front that has the base of the Ministry of Defense. It has the general command base of the IDF. It has the war room, the war cabinet room. It has the commission to monitor and control the war. It also has the office of the prime minister. It has the office of the spokesperson of the IDF, the rabbinate of the army, and the main command base of the Israeli genocide forces. That's what Hezbollah attacked yesterday, twice, not once. And today we had more images coming from Israel about more destruction in Tel Aviv and in other areas. And reports coming from Israel say that the sirens haven't stopped throughout the whole day. Hezbollah sending missiles and drones on Israeli bases, on multiple Israeli locations in the north, in the central parts, attacking sensitive locations. How are Hezbollah able to conduct all of these operations with the level of Israeli attacks that happened in recent weeks? It's very simple. What Israel conducted in Lebanon was mainly activities for a show that wouldn't necessarily have an effect on the ground. So either Israel does not really understand or know the true essence of the organizations that it's fighting, which would make it severely incompetent, or they're just doing it for a show to achieve an image of victory that they could potentially sell if they would want to reach any sort of solution. And Netanyahu was quoted saying the other day that we cannot achieve anything bigger than the assassination of the figure of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. Okay. If it's the first one, then you're incompetent. If it's the second one, then it's not going to stop any attacks on Israel. And Hizballah are implementing every single thing that they told Israel they would be implementing had Israel continued its acts of aggression against Lebanon. Because don't forget, Hezbollah started as a supporting front with very limited activities that were effective indeed, because they exhausted high levels of the genocide forces to not allow them to gain more freedom of movement or freedom of more genocide in Gaza. And they told Israel at the time, and the attacks initially were limited to approximately 5 kilometers down the occupied territories borders from Lebanon. They told them, we are a supporting front, and Sayyid Nasrallah at the time said this is not an all-out war. And our main interest is for Israel to stop the war. And if Israel stops the war in Gaza, they don't even have to negotiate with us. We will stop all of our attacks, because our attacks are a show of solidarity to support our Palestinian brothers and sisters who are oppressed, who are facing these crimes. And we will stop if Israel stops. But what did Israel do? They started, instead of attacking the locations that are attacking them from Lebanon, expanding further. And that was a very big mistake, because Hezbollah told them initially, if you expand further, we will expand further. And Hezbollah are very known to be extremely truthful and transparent when it comes to their statements. With every statement they make, they are always truthful and transparent, even with their enemies. You continue and target deeper into Lebanese territories, we will target you deeper in your territories. You attack senior figures from our organization, we will attack senior figures from your organization. And there are figures who are very senior in Israel that are most likely dead, that Israel did not announce that they're dead, but they have disappeared. Like the head of the 8,200 unit, Yosef Ariel, following the Hezbollah attack on Galilot, which is the main hub of the Israeli intelligence community that includes the Military Intelligence Directorate, the Mossad, and the 8,200 unit. Alongside, of course, them blatantly targeting Benjamin Netanyahu, and Benjamin Netanyahu not declaring where he and his government are conducting meetings. Benjamin Netanyahu and his government do not declare where they have meetings. They have meetings all across the country. They no longer have a meeting in a set location that is used for the purposes of government meetings. Why? Because Hezbollah want to assassinate him, and there are many people in Israel who want him dead. Netanyahu completely tore the social fabric of the Israeli society. He ripped it to shreds, to a level where Israeli Jews are now serving Iran in its ambitions to take down certain figures inside of Israel, or harm Israel, or gain intelligence about them. Yet, he is continuing. And after all of that escalation that came from Israel, came the escalation from Hezbollah, up until they declared a new phase. Up until they declared a new phase with the arrival of the new Secretary General. And the new Secretary General, he told them, and the leadership of Hezbollah, that we will turn Haifa into Kiryat Shmone. Kiryat Shmone is one of the most hit settlements in the north of the occupied territories. And now that's the case. Every single day, over 100 missiles approximately every single day. At one point, it almost reached 200 deep into Israeli territories, apart from the regular attacks that they are conducting in Lebanon. And that's becoming the norm. However, Benjamin Netanyahu is still continuing. And it's not just that he is still continuing the war, by the way. What's happening on the ground is indicating that Israel has longer term plans when it comes to settlements at the expense of the lives of the cannon fodder they send to Gaza in the form of, people. They are expanding the axis of Netzarim. They are destroying civilian buildings for no reason. And now people in the army are saying that. Like we stated in one of my previous videos, I stated about one of the latest articles that came from Haaretz that spoke with senior figures in the Israeli army, including soldiers, not just top figures, who said all of that information, alongside more leaks, of course, and Benjamin Netanyahu trying to blackmail certain figures now in the army, and him having a surveillance/intelligence unit within the army to hand him information that contradicts the standard due diligence required when it comes to the Israeli army. You get certain information, you pass it to your commander, then if your commander sees fit, he will brief the prime minister with this information. So the level of distrust is sky high between Netanyahu and his army, and his new defense or war minister is proving to be extremely incompetent to a level where he is actually ridiculed in Israeli mainstream media because of his incompetence and his lack of knowledge about the objectives of war that Netanyahu himself declared when it comes to Lebanon. He said one of the objectives of the war is to disarm Hizballah. That's not a declared objective of the war. The declared objective of Benjamin Netanyahu was to return the people back to the north. And he said it was a declared objective. And mind you, there are differences between declared and non-declared. And there's a very big argument that Israel's declared objectives are, of course, not true. However, these are the declared objectives, and we establish the situation and development based on those objectives, alongside, of course, monitoring their genuine objectives and how that is playing out. So the talks that were reported between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump when Benjamin Netanyahu visited the United States, they could end up being true. And the report said that Netanyahu would not get any sort of agreement when it comes to a ceasefire before the arrival of Donald Trump, so that Donald Trump can come, give Israel certain favors. The favor this time could be, for example, a recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank. The Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, he said that next year we will announce our full sovereignty over the West Bank. And Trump, he has people in his cabinet who call for a one state with Jewish supremacy, a one apartheid state, an expansion of the supremacy, an expansion of the racism, an expansion of the genocide and brutality when it comes to Israel. So Benjamin Netanyahu could be relying on him so that Donald Trump can come, give him the favors that he wants, and in return, Benjamin Netanyahu would potentially stop the war, or decrease the level of intensity of the war with certain presence. That's why, the recipe is doomed from its birth, really. And then if that agreement is reached, and we even have a unilateral declaration coming from Israel about this agreement, and don't underestimate that happening, don't rule that out. That's something that can happen. but giving Trump at the same time the credit to reaching a solution when it comes to Israel. And if you recall, when Donald Trump was in power, he was working towards the deal of the century. If some of you remember those days, the deal of the century was basically giving Israel full sovereignty in return for potentially giving the Palestinians, especially in Gaza, certain parts of the Negev deserts. At the time, they had a map, but the overall sovereignty would be for Israel. Israel would dictate everything that happens between the Jordan River to the sea. Donald Trump wants these very big deals that he would hail as historical deals, the deal of the century he wanted, and he, of course, was pressing on with the Abraham Accords. Although Benjamin Netanyahu had a deal on a golden plate from Joe Biden back in April that would include Saudi recognition and a peace process with them in return to a ceasefire and a recognition of a Palestinian state. But now we're even further away from that. Now the question is, can Israel sustain all of that with the level of damage it has inflicted on itself? Like I said before, when it comes to the ceasefire, there are arguments on the ground that highly indicate that Israel needs to have a ceasefire only if we only talk, by the way, and there are many reasons to talk about it, the economic situation, the societal situation, the long-term effectiveness, and the potential of a continuation of the existence of the state of Israel, because now that's a massive question. Their military, if we only talk about the military, now they're saying at the best percentage, 85% of what they need are serving. A previous report said between 17 to 25% of reservists are refusing. And at the time, I mentioned the fact that we're almost a year into the war. Many people inside of Israel would have turned 18 by now, and they would be at a serving age. And I was wondering at the time, where are these people? They could have made up the numbers. Because in Israel, if you're in the army, you are either killed or wounded to varying degrees. And what Israel says or calls lightly wounded means several limbs have been chopped, let alone severely wounded or, medium wounds. And if you're not, then you're suffering from tremendous problems to a level where, mainstream media wanted us to feel sorry for genocide soldiers because they ran over so many Palestinian bodies, and it's traumatizing them, how the bodies were squashed after they ran them over with bulldozers and destroyed homes. They were trying to get people's sympathy for people committing the most brutal, the worst crimes in history. So all of the army is suffering. And he's trying to force the people who he had serving to come back. And many of them, they don't even have motivation, because if you only talk about Gaza, they had to go back to Gaza many times in certain locations. If we talk about Jabalia or Khan Yunis, these are places they've spent months in, withdrew, and then had to come back. Why? Because the resistance is not going anywhere. You can go out and come back as many times as you like. And whenever they come back, they receive even harsher blows. To this day, the Palestinian resistance is targeting the genocide forces every single day in Gaza. They're targeting the biggest base they've established themselves in to an extent, which is the axis of Netzarim. Israel's trying to make it an appealing place for Israelis to go to. They've had this article the other day saying that, in the Netzarim line now we have, water pipes, we have normal bathrooms. and we have cellular connectivity, which works very well, and you can even hang around in your shorts. You don't even have to wear a helmet or what have you. And today, the armed wing of the PIJ showed footage of them launching missiles on the Netzarim line. So they are trying to make it attractive to join the genocide forces as much as possible, but that's not working. It's not working with the people who are already there. There's more and more refusal, not for the right causes for the majority of the time, by the way. The people who are refusing to serve for moral purposes are a minority. They exist, but they are a minority who make a statement and pay for it with their freedom. They can get imprisoned. Say, I don't want to serve in the army because the army commits war crimes. It's not that. It's people who don't even have a will to go and fight from the get-go, and who are seeing the progress of everything, and who are seeing that their lives is being taken away for one narcissistic psychopath leading the country. But with all of that, he is continuing. And that is unprecedented in Israel. In Israel, you generally had a leadership that knew its limits to an extent. And now not only have you have the narcissistic genocidal psychopath Netanyahu, he's putting incompetent people ultimately in charge of the IDF. Israel Katz, the defense minister, because the defense minister is in charge of the IDF. He's one level above. And if you're putting someone incompetent only for him to be a yes man for you, and for you to be the ultimate person leading the situation for your own career, for your own benefits, then you are leading the country to oblivion. And that's something many people in Israel are aware of and were aware of from a very long time ago. However, that doesn't seem to bother Benjamin Netanyahu. That's the dangerous part here. It's dangerous, and it's going to be lethal at the end of it for Israel. Israel is going to be doomed because of Benjamin Netanyahu. He thinks he's going to be the savior. He's going to be the person who will be ending Israel by his actions. But again, he doesn't see that. He doesn't see that, and he's still in power, and he is making powerful changes within the establishment that were considered to be a taboo previously. And he's still getting the support from the United States administration, whether from the Democrats or from the Trump administration that we are waiting to come to power in January. Well, not waiting, but they will be coming to power in late January. And it's not like, the resistance forces or Iran are relying on the goodwill of Donald Trump or anything as such, because even when it comes to Iran, they've had a very bad experience with him. He completely tore apart the nuclear agreement, and he killed Qasem Soleimani. And even now, he is still having this warmongering tone with Iran, although he promised his voters that he will not be expanding the wars, but he will be ending the wars. However, that is not what he's doing with his appointment of warmongers and Zionist genocide supporters coming with his new administration.